Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. Dear respected viewers, we welcome you to a new episode. This episode narrates the story of Abraham, peace be upon him, and in particular and exactly in the book of Genesis. Now, when we talk about this figure, the character of Abraham, we are talking about a central figure due to the importance role that this great prophet played. So Dr. Gharam has chosen to talk about various events about the throughout the life of Abraham and his relative in stages, or you can call it events or stations. So in the first event or station, we come to know that it's already been related to you that he was born in a city called Ur, that is among the Chaldean place, the south of Iraq. And his people, they used to worship idols. And you remember the story that has been related to you already when he came and he demolished and destroyed all these idols. So as a response, they decided to make up and lit a big fire. And they decided to throw him in the fire. But with the providence from Allah, he was saved. And so there are so many important events about this character, the character of Abraham. Yet, to your surprise, dear viewers, it was not mentioned in the book of Genesis at all. Dr. Gharama is really bewildered, and he is trying to attribute such thing to various reasons, but he came to the conclusion that it must have been memory. If you depend on your memory, as they say, memory betrays. So since they just depended on their memory rather than writing and giving evidence and writing down all these details, maybe they never mentioned this important story. Just the opposite, they attributed the story to Daniel. So in the book of Daniel, they say that it was Daniel who went through this kind of ordeal, that is the fire. Now we come to the second station, or the second event. It happened in Babylon, and at the time the king was Nimrod. So when he came to hear about the miracle that happened and the providence that happened to Abraham, that he was not affected by the fire in which he was thrown, he called upon him, and he met him, and he started to debate with him about the existence of God and the like. So Abraham told him that God can take and give life to humans. Out of his naivety, he was naive, he said, well, I can't do this. So he just simply brought a person who was sentenced to death, and he just pardoned him, thinking or convincing himself that this is a kind of giving life. Out of his intelligence, Abraham, he went with him, in this dialogue, and he gave him the hard challenge. He said, God, Allah, bring the sun from the east. Can you bring it from the west? So the disbeliever, that is the Nimrod, he was amazed. And to your surprise, again, dear viewers, this important debate and this story does not exist in the book of Genesis. Then Dr. Gharama raised a question that was it mentioned in the book of Genesis about the birthplace of Abraham, that he was born in Ur? The answer, yes, he quote that this has been mentioned in chapter 11, verse 31, in which it reads as such. Terah, that is the father of Abraham, in Islam we call him Azra. So Terah took his son Adam, and then so he took his son Adam and also his grandson Lot, and he took them out of Ur in order to go to the land of Canaan in Palestine. When they reached Haran, they just settled there, and it was in this place in Haran when Terah died. And when he died, he was 250 years old. In the scene, now we come to the scene in Haran itself. This is the third station, or the third event after Babylon. So here we come to know or to talk about the debate, the advice that took place between Abraham and the people of Haran. Those people, they were polytheists and they were heathen. They used to worship the sun, the moon, and the planets. So Abraham came to try to debate with them and to tell them and make them aware that those things that they are worshipping with it, they are the sun, the moon, the planets, can do nothing. They can neither benefit or harm any person. And they are run in their orbit according to a God who created them. So they should rather worship the Creator, God, rather than these helpless plants and so on. About the name of Abraham, we were told that his name before was Abram, then his name changed to Abraham. The same with Sarah. Her name before was Sarai, then it was changed into Sarah, which means princess. Of course, well, we have no objection with this, but you see our position as Muslims with such relation. If this narrative and this event does not coincide or does not contradict with the Quran or the prophetic traditions, we accept it. If it contradicts, surely we will not consider it to be correct or sound. There is a third position when this event, that mentioned either has not been mentioned or that we don't have a certain thing to refute them or to accept them. So we say maybe. We as a Muslim say it could be. In the sense that we do want to say it is impossible, so we will insult the revelation. Nor can we take the risk and say, yes, we accept them. So in this case, they might not be truthful. So we just, our position, we say maybe. Since we don't have a clear stance or position with such event related to our main source, the Holy Quran and the prophetic traditions. Now we come to the fourth station, the fourth event. It happened in Egypt, and we related to you before that Abraham has passed through an ordeal, a big trial, exemplified in the sense that when Pharaoh happened to know about the beauty of his wife Sarah, so he decided to take her. So Abraham, when he was asked what is his relation to Sarah, he said that he is her brother, in the sense that if he said that he is her husband, surely he will be massacred, he will be killed. So he said he was her brother, and he was truthful, because after all, she is his cousin. So in the sense, Abraham did not commit any lying or the like. Then what happened? The Pharaoh, he got drunk he got, I'm sorry, drunk, and because he lost his mind, he ordered for Sarah to be brought to him. It was really a critical time for Abraham, so he just pleaded to Allah, and he invoked Allah's help to relieve and to save his wife Sarah. And Alhamdulillah, his invocation was accepted. So when this Pharaoh tried to even touch Sarah, he will feel paralyzed, and not only that, he will also feel suffocation, to the extent that his life was threatened. It happened 3 times, to the extent that he started to plead to Sarah to forgive him, so he can be relieved from what happened to him. Not only that, but also he gave her a maid by the name of Hagar to be in her service. Dear viewers, we remind you that we are still in the book of Genesis, and you remember last time we talked about the story of Abraham and Sarah with Pharaoh, and that due to the sincere invocation of Abraham, Sarah was untouched, and she returned back to her husband. What Dr. Gharama will be narrating to you is complete version, complete narration from what we have been saying. The story goes as such. Abraham told Sarah to say that she is his sister in order not to be killed, and in order also to have some gains. So imagine, dear viewers, a mighty prophet, and not any prophet, the close friend of God, as if he's a materialist and he wants to gain a certain thing at the cost of his honor. God forbid. Anyhow, we continue the story. Their story says that Abraham told Sarah and confirmed that she should claim that she is his sister for 2 reasons: in order not to avoid being killed, and also, and this is really what is strange, in order to have some worldly gains. So when Abraham and Sarah arrived at Egypt, the chiefs of Pharaoh, they told him about her beauty. So he ordered for her to be brought to his palace, to his place, and he was over generous to Abraham. He even, this narration even gives us the details that Pharaoh gave Abraham cows, goats, slave girls, donkeys, camels, even she-donkeys. And Dr. Gharama pauses here to comment that when those rabbis and priests, they give this narration based upon their materialistic details. Otherwise, what is the use of giving all these details of every item, what they supposed to be given to Abraham, while we know that Abraham is a mighty prophet and he doesn't, give any attention to such worldly gains at all, let alone at the cost of his honor. Anyhow, God caused Pharaoh and his families a lot of discomfort. So he called upon Abraham and he said, "What have you done to me? Why didn't you tell me that she is your wife? You told me that she is your sister. Now take her." And he gave him more gifts and so on. So they want to say, and this is really something incredible, as if they are trying to pass a message that Abraham wouldn't mind to have certain materialistic gains at the cost of his honor, as if they want to legalize prostitution and so on, while Abraham is a prophet, and being a prophet, he is chosen by God, so he wouldn't even think about such thing. His honor and his name is more valuable than any worldly materials. Another second, we'll call it the second version or the second narration. It is mentioned in Genesis chapter 20. Now we have a different personality, completely different personality. We are not talking about Pharaoh anymore. We are talking about a Palestinian king by the name of Abimelech. The story goes as such. Again, Abraham said and claimed that Sarah is his sister. And Sarah was brought to this Palestinian king, Abimelech. When she was brought to him, he saw God speaking to him in a dream, and he said, "You will die because you have taken a lady. Don't you know that she is married?" So, as an answer to God, and imagine how dare this Palestinian king to God. Of course, this is what they have written, what they claim. He complained against God and say, "You destroy innocent nation, for he told me," that is Abraham, "and even she, Sarah, told me that she is his sister. I did this with good heart." So God answered him, I know, and that is why, because I know you have a good heart, I prevented you from even touching Sarah. So return her to her husband. He is a prophet, and make sure he will pray for you in order to live. So Abraham first prayed for him. So wife returned, and Abraham made invocation. So Abimelech was cured. And not only that, this narration tells us that even his wives and even, they gave birth, for the first time. Dr. Gharama gave two important comments. One, how could the close friend of God, and who he has, this kind of status and so on, how could such thing, happen to him? And also, how could that God will ask this Palestinian king to seek blessing and supplication from Abraham rather than from God straight away? So this is one comment. The other comment Dr. Gharama paused and commented on is the time. This event might take just one evening, one night, while this narration talks about wives of this Palestinian king. They were barren. Then later on, after the blessings and the invocation of Abraham, they started to not to be barren anymore, and now they gave birth. And this might take long time. So we will leave it to you, dear viewers, to come to your conclusion. It is something incredible. The third story, the third version, is even more amazing. The third version goes as such. Abimelech looked out from his window. So he saw Isaac fondling Rebekah. Let's pause here. Dr. Gharama, he says, now the characters are completely different. We are not talking about Abraham and Sarah anymore. We are talking about the same person, the Palestinian king, Abimelech, but with completely two different personality, Isaac and his wife Rebekah. Anyhow, let's go back to the story. They say that Abimelech was looking out of the window, so he saw he saw Isaac fondling his wife, and he was of the impression that she was his sister. So he called upon him and he said, "Why did you say that she is your sister? What have you done to us? Don't you know that if our nation, our people, came to know that she is your sister rather than your wife, anyone, might just lie down with her, and then she will be pregnant." Again, Dr. Gharama pauses and say, what kind of society is this? Because she is not a wife, she is a sister. So this means anyone can commit fornication or adultery with her. And also he comments that the plot is not nicely done or organized. The plot of this story is not nicely organized. Because in the first story, we hear that Abimelech, the story of Abimelech happened when Abraham was 75 years old. Then imagine 70 years later, still we are talking about Abimelech. Anyhow, this is again incredible. So what is the conclusion that Dr. Gharama came to? The conclusion that he came to is that there must have been some kind of domination done by those rabbis and priests and scribes, that everyone would insist on narrating his version of the story, and that everyone is trying to impose his impression or his version of the story upon the other. So they came out with all these contradictions and all these, discrepancies that happens in the stories that contradict. One story contradicts to the others. Now, Dr. Gharama narrated to us a very amazing story. It was narrated in the Torah. It is about a person. He was a priest, in fact. His name is Melchizedek. He is the king of Jerusalem, and he was a priest. And then what happened? It happened that certain chief of the tribes, they took the property of Lot. So when Abraham came to know about what happened to his nephew, because remember, Lot is the nephew of Abraham, so he followed those people, and he managed to retrieve all this property and give them back to his nephew Lot. So this character that came up to us in this story, that is Melchizedek, he came to Abraham with bread and wine, and he put his hand over the head of whom? Of Abraham. And who's Abraham? The close friend of God. Imagine an ordinary person, a priest, will give the blessings to Abraham. Is it Abraham that was giving the blessings to Melchizedek? No, it's the other way around. It is really astonishing, So he gave the blessings to Abraham, and we are told that in the New Testament, we are told that this character that is Melchizedek, he is no one but Jesus. They claim that Jesus comes every now and then. So it was Jesus rather than this priest. So no wonder why Abraham gave him 1/10 of the spoils, because after all, he is Jesus. He is God, or God incarnate. So this is how the story is telling us. Again, Dr. Gharama comments every now and then that all these contradictions and all these incredible narrations is due to depending on the memory and also depending on myth. Now we come to a very important event, that is the marriage between Abraham and Hagar. It is mentioned in chapter 16, book of Genesis. The story is closer to our view, to the revelation in Islam. There isn't big differences. The story goes as such. Hagar, that is, she is the slave girl of Sarah. When Sarah noticed that she was a virtuous lady, following their way, so she gifted her to Abraham. And then Sarah noticed that, she is barren, so she asked Abraham to emancipate Hagar and to marry her, which he did. When Hagar became pregnant, the story tells us that she started to look down on Sarah. And even Sarah complained to Abraham, and she said, this slave girl, this maid, is looking down upon me. God is between you and me. As if to mean that is God justice between you and me. And this jealousy, started to take place. So Abraham had, although he was not, he abhorred what has been said about Hagar and her son, yet he submitted to the request of Sarah, and he took Hagar and Ishmael to Mecca. Then he stood behind a certain mountain, and he supplicated to God to preserve them, to keep them, and to protect them. Then he left them with this supplication, and he went back to Palestine. Now, the event of Hagar leaving Palestine happened twice with two narration. The first narration is that the angel Gabriel found her near a spring in the way to Shur, as if they didn't want to say Zamzam, or they don't want to escape from the truth and say that it was the well of Zamzam. Really, they just claimed that it was a spring in the way to Shur. So what happened? The angel Gabriel said, where are you coming from, and where to? Where are you going to? She said, I escaped from my lady Sarah. So the angel said, go back and obey her. Then he told her the good news that your offsprings and descent will multiply, and you will have a son called Ishmael, meaning God hears. He will be lonesome. The chapter relates that Hagar asked, or supplicated that she will be honored to see God, but didn't realize she saw God from the back. Of course, our stance as a Muslim, that no one could see God in this life. Even this reminds us of even Moses, who was the converser with God. God told us in the Holy Quran, you will never see me, although he was Moses. So this is part of our dogma, that no one could see God in this life. The second narration, it is the story again of Hagar. They say that it occurs after Sarah was blessed with Isaac, with a son Isaac. Ishmael was at the time between 13 to 14 years old, and he was reaching the age of responsibility, the age of accountability, the age of responsibility that he can, do things on his own, work for his life, and so on. When Abraham saw a vision that he would sacrifice his son Ishmael. Abraham and Hagar and Ishmael, they passed the trial. The story has been told to you, dear viewers, before. But Dr. Garama now come to take the conclusion that as a reward to their tolerance and a reward to their submission to the order of God, to do something which is not easy, to sacrifice Ishmael. So Abraham himself submitted to God and he was obedient. Hagar, the mother of Ishmael, submitted and she was tolerant and, obedient to the order of God. Ishmael himself, the sacrifice, he submitted without any objection. But what was the reward? The reward was great. Dr. Gharama relates to us, it is enough to know that they all passed the trial, the ordeal, and they were rewarded by God. Abraham became the close friend of God, and also he was blessed with a second son, Isaac. Hagar, it is enough to know and to realize that she was the wife of a prophet and the mother of a prophet. As for Ishmael, he was rewarded that he was not only a prophet but also a messenger. We move now, dear viewers, to the story of the birth of Isaac. Abraham, we were told that he was in a tent in the wilderness of Hebron, and it was at noon when the heat was at its utmost. So he saw God and two angels. Imagine, see, he saw God and two angels. So he noticed that they have been traveling. So he told them to stay in the shade of a certain tree while he will go to bring them some water so they can rub their feet, and also he will bring them some food and something to drink. Dear viewer, the real story that we know, that they were angels, and even Abraham didn't know about them. Witness to this, that out of his generosity and hospitality, he brought them a roasted lamb. And when he noticed that their hand doesn't touch the food, as you know, angels, they do not eat. So he feared them. And after that, they told him, the two angels, they told him about their reality and their mission. While here we are told completely different thing, we are told that Abraham was told that he will be blessed with a son, and his name will be Isaac, which means to laugh. So his wife Sarah was near the entrance of the tent. So when she heard this prophecy that she and Abraham will be blessed with a son called Isaac, she laughed and also slapped her face out of surprise and wonder. So the angel answered, God ability, God can do anything. As for their story, it goes like this. Abraham knew them, and God told him, after a year Sarah will have Isaac. So Sarah laughed. So God said, why you laugh? So imagine the situation. The first thing that Dr. Gharama is commenting on is that Abraham came to know from the beginning that this is God and the two angels. Number two, that Abraham was given the news that after 1 year he will be blessed with a baby boy. His name will be Isaac. And as a response, his wife Sarah laughed. So God didn't like it, and she said, why you laugh? She said, I didn't laugh. So God said, yes, you did. Imagine. And this is the commentary by Dr. Gharama. How could a virtuous lady, a wife of a prophet, could do these exchanges with God? I mean, anyhow, we leave it to your judgment, dear viewers. And how could she deny, while God knows the unseen? How could she deny while he knows the unseen? God knows the unseen. In another narration, there is a completely different story. We were told that it wasn't Sarah who laughed, it was Abraham himself, and he indulged in laughing to the extent that he fell down to his face. and he was commenting, a son for 100-year old man? This is incredible. Then we have a third narration, a third version. The third version, they say, yes, she laughed, but the exchanges that has been narrated or quoted in the beginning, it didn't take place. She just laughed, and there was no exchanges or dialogue or debate between her and God. The story continues. God asked the two angels. Again, we should pause for a while and ask ourselves, could we attribute such thing, to God? Anyway, let's continue the story. The story says, God was consulting the two angels and say, shall I tell Abraham of our mission? Why we are here? Where are we going? And what we will do with the people of Lot, that is Sodom and Gomorrah? And he told the angels, as you know, Abraham will become a great nation, and from his descendant will be a great nation. So I'd rather tell him. So he told him, and he said, well, I received a complaint. Imagine, God received a complaint, as if he doesn't know everything that is happening on the earth and the universe, whatever. Anyhow, the story says that God received a complaint, so he came down to make some kind of investigation to find out, is this complaint correct or no? May God forgive us, even from talking or reading such thing. But we want, to pass a certain message that when the hand of human being tampers with the scripture, this is what we get. All these kind of incredible stories, contradictory stories, and so on. Anyhow, we'll continue to say, so God sent the two angels, and he remained with Abraham. Now we come to the expulsion of Hagar and Ishmael. We are still in the book of Genesis, and in particularly we are talking about the chapter of 21, verse 9. It says, Sarah noticed Ishmael was mocking her son Isaac. So she expelled Hagar and her son. Abraham was not happy about this, because after all, Hagar was his wife and Ishmael is his son. Yet he, he did not he tried to show some kind of tolerance, and when she complained to him, he just brought a certain provision, that is bread and water and so on, and he took Hagar. And he put all this provision on the back, on the shoulder of Hagar, and Hagar found herself in the wilderness. She was in the wilderness of Beersheba. And when water finishes, she was in a difficult situation. This is what we are told in this narration. She put down Ishmael. And here Dr. Garama, points out certain contradiction, that Ishmael is supposed to be between 13 to 14, not a small baby that Hagar will put him down or hold him by the hand. But anyway, these are the discrepancies, again, that happens when human hand tampers with the scripture and the word of God. Anyhow, we continue to say that when the water finished, she put down Ishmael as if he was a child. In fact, he was 14 years old. And she went far in order not to witness his death, because there is no more water, no more food. So she kept aloof. She went far away in order not to see or to witness his imminent death. She cried. So God heard the cries of the child and of Sarah, and he sent an angel with water, with the will of water. Again, they do want to say Zamzam, which is the fact, But anyhow, they just said with a will of water. They say that Ishmael grew up in desert Paran, and Paran here it is nothing else but Mecca itself. And Dr. Gharama drew the attention of all of us that there is an academic research by Dr. Mundhir al-Saqqar that proves that this expression or this term, Paran, is nothing but Mecca. It refers to Mecca. Now, Dr. Gharama raises a question. What do they gain from altering the story? It is really a valid question. Why do they do all these things? Why are they, altering these stories in different versions? The answer in chapter 22, that is, it was Isaac, not Ishmael, was the would-be sacrifice. So the main point that they are doing all this kind of alteration, illogical alteration, just to end up and to prove to the people, to the reader, that the sacrifice was Isaac, not Ishmael. And that Isaac was the only son with Abraham. Of course, we know he was not the only son. The eldest son is Ishmael. But when they managed to keep Ishmael far away, as if just to show or to give the impression that Isaac is the only son. Now, Dr. Gharama came to comment on this name, the name of Moriah, that he's of the opinion that maybe it is referring to Mina. It is one of the stations where the pilgrims meet on the eighth day of Hajj, of pilgrimage, and then they bring from far away, they bring water in order to prepare for their return. When they return from Arafat, they will stay 2 or 3 days in this place. So irrigation and bringing water should be secured, and maybe this is a reference with reference to the Moriah. What is our stance of Isaac and Ishmael as a Muslim? Dr. Gharama emphasizes the fact that both are respected prophets, both, and he gave a good proverb in Arabic that we look upon them as 2 eyes in one head, in the sense that there is no distinction, there is no distinction at all. But what happened? The revelation says that it was Ishmael. Well, Ishmael was the sacrifice, and that's it. And this doesn't mean that we belittle Isaac. God forbid. Far from it, If the revelation tells us that it was Isaac the sacrifice, we will submit to whatever is revealed to the prophets. So this is just kind of a clarification, and we are not doing it out of prejudice that Ishmael, he is the grandfather of the Arabs, so we will incline or will be biased to his side. No, far from it. As a Muslim, we submit to whatever God, and that's why we are Muslim. As you know, to submit is Islam. Islam means, the term Islam means submission and peace. So as soon as you claim you are a Muslim, you submit to the truth, you submit to the revelation, and you keep your inclination and whims and desire and tribalism and all this, you keep it away. There is nothing but obedience and submission, and this is the term of Muslim. Now we come to a sad event, the death of Sarah and her burial. Anyhow, Sarah died, so Abraham, he asked the Hittites to intercede for him, and by asking a person by the name of Afron bin Sohar to give him a graveyard, which they did. They interceded for Abraham, and he was granted this place, and he insisted on paying money, although it was given to him as a gift, but he insisted that he should pay for this graveyard in order to bury the dead. Then we come to a really amazing, event. We are told that Abraham got married to a lady by the name of Keturah, and he had many sons from her. But we as a Muslim, we know of, the sons Ishmael and Isaac. But we were told that he had many sons out of this marriage when he got married to a lady, the name Keturah. Now, as it is, will be the end of every person, whether a prophet, messenger, the story and the life term of Abraham came to an end. Abraham died. May Allah be pleased with him. And his son Ishmael and Isaac buried him in a place called the cave of Machpelah. Now we come to talk about the descendants of Ishmael. It is mentioned in chapter 25. They say that he had 12 sons. This reminds us of the 12 tribes. And they were called the tribes. And they spread it in the area from Palestine to North Yemen. And when you see in the map, you will come to notice that Mecca is central to this area from Palestine to the north of Yemen. But here there is another really interesting saying. That is the place of called Hawila. What is amazing is that the text states that the descendant of Ishmael, they spread in a place called Hawila. But when we come to geography, let's talk about geography now. There is a place near Al-Baha region called Hawala. So again, this rings a bell that it could be this place that still exists until nowadays. It is called Hawala instead of Hawila, as has been stated in the Testament.
أكاديمية التعريف بالإسلام أكاديمية التعريف بالإسلام أكاديمية التعريف بالإسلام